All right, Joanne, thanks. And first of all, truly appreciate the time that that your team spent with us, pulling together some what we feel like are really great wireframes and mock-ups that are gonna be great for this sales markdown application that we're talking about doing with you guys, and really understanding the insights of those markdowns and how you guys are planning for what you guys have coming and the future markdowns you have. But that being said, the next step that we have, once we kind of have that figured out, is to start talking about the data that's going to feed into those. Because right now we kind of have the pie and sky ideals. We want to make sure that we can get the right data and the right format in there that's going to be effective. So with the right quality, the right context, usability, and all the things that we always talk about. So the first kind of obvious question is, what data, from what you have seen and the things that we've given you, what data is needed to truly provide the analysis for the markdown data, things that you've seen so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think most of the sales and the markdown data resides in our custom ERP system today. Underneath the covers, that's really operationally DB2. We also have that data aggregated in the data marts, which is stored in our Postgres data warehouse in the cloud. So, but also looking at that, I think we also need to look at the demographic data that comes from Claritas, the quote data from our CRM, and then the COVID data that's really a CDC data stream, because I think that's going to help us try to understand demand and what the effect of COVID has on these sales for us this year.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool, a new way that we can add stuff to this, and everybody's going through a lot of changes from that, and being able to see the effects of that would be neat. Along with some of these other things. So next thing that we kind of want to look at, as we dig a little bit deeper to understand the data, can you kind of help us understand with the data marts especially, will they suffice to give us the access we need, or do we need to get into the operational data from what you've seen to be able to get to the data we need? And then, of course, from that, which poses a deeper question, if we have to use the operational data, what level of access do we have to that one course into the data mart, which probably is more open?
Yeah, you're right. The data mart is very open and we have access to that for this project. The operational data store might be a different story, but we just need to be focused on letting them know what from the ODS we need. So depending on what we need, I'm sure we can get access to it. The other data sources are open as well. For example, the Claritas and the web services that we probably would need for the CDC data, that would be able to have access through all our web focused tooling.
Good. And from a usability standpoint, then that it kind of leads me to another question, and we'll have to go through and test, the connection period, but how often are those different data sources updated? I'm assuming that most of the Claritas, the ones that you guys use as services with CBDC data, is probably updated pretty, on their time frame. But for the other things, the ERP and the data marts and those types of things, how often are those updated?
Yeah, the data marts are updated daily, overnight, and the operational data stores are the operational data is really real time. The demographic data, the quote, the COVID data sources are pretty much real time. At least they are for us. And then they are updated by their own owner's schedule. But, for the purposes of this application, the data is, really done frequently enough for us to kind of experience a good application to provide this pricing.
Perfect. So typically, in data like demographics and the COVID data, like I said, you guys don't really have a whole lot of control. It's just a service you guys are consuming. My next question, though, would be, again, more for the stuff that you guys do have control over. What do you know about the overall quality and accuracy of the data, especially in the sales and markdown, as well as anything in the Salesforce CBQ, the quote data? Is that stuff pretty accurate?
Well, since the sales and markdown data came from an older custom ERP system going into Salesforce today, there are some issues with the fields that have been entered, and there are, of course, some duplicate records because some of the data is manually entered. But I think, and also there are multiple currencies, and so that might be a little challenging to get the accurate totals. But I think there is enough things that we can do in the platform to ensure that we can kind of cleanse that information as we need it to do some good analysis. I think that there are things that make up the larger percent of the issues that we face in data quality we can overcome with the platform itself.
Perfect. And that's very good to hear. That makes us feel much better about this. And again, there are some things I know we'll be able to handle within just as we get through that as well. But hopefully we'll keep that to a minimum. I mentioned before, like I said, you don't have much control over some of the, the COVID data you're getting from the CDC and some of the demographics data. But have you guys, because you don't have control of data there, joining to that data can oftentimes be a problem with the data that you guys do have. Have you guys done any of that? Have you created applications that join to those different services and were able to pull data from your data mart to match up to the COVID or the demographic data that we may be looking at?
Yeah, and the exciting thing is we have done this for some past projects. Awesome. Because that data has been very influential in other things we do. So we have been able to make some referential integrity between those two systems. We've been able to kind of build some workflows for us to take that data and cleanse it and mash it together. We also have a metadata application that provides us information on the data mart, the lineage of that data, the relationships to outside sources. So I think that's going to be a great resource for us as we go forth in this project to matching up that information to our data marts.
Perfect, good. And that experience is always good. So we'll probably want to steal from that as we go through this, because that's, again, it's always key. We got to be able to connect the data and get it in context of what we're going to be working on. So another question I have, we talked about some data quality issues that you guys have seen in the past, like duplication for manual entry and some old data and other things that we talked about. Has that been an issue? Is that things that you guys have been able to handle in the back end, or is that issues that you guys have actually had getting in front of users and them trusting the actual data that's in the reports?
Yeah, I think that having a platform allows us to do a lot of kind of shielding the end user for the reporting and the development logic around that. The more that we can build that into metadata too, the better off we're going to be, because we can build that. But I think you're going to see today, there is a great power in the tool, and it allows us to build some of that logic in, so the end users can trust the data as we're giving it to them for their analysis.
Right. Very good. Good. So a couple other questions, and I think we're getting close to the end of this, but I know seasonality is always a big deal in any company, but especially in retail and buying habits of your consumers. And I'm sure, obviously this last year has had a big effect on your data, which is why we're looking at pulling in some of that CDC data to kind of help see some of the effects of that as well and match some of that up. But have you done any work in the past to discover the exact parameters of seasonality that may be affecting your data? And I guess the second question from that is, what are your user expectations with seasonality? They're expecting to see this seasonality, or expecting that kind of be smoothed out to make decisions from a year-to-year basis. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when you look at the data, there are multiple fields that we're going to have to analyze, like sales and revenue, and we do run models like Holt Winters and other things that help us kind of smooth that seasonality out and help us with price optimization from our ERP systems. And we're always making changes to our model to account for changes from COVID, because some products are really not affected by COVID, but there are a lot of products that have been impacted around sales and sales growth around COVID numbers. And so I think it's really important that we take that into consideration when we do anything around pricing or pricing sensitivity. So it's going to be a great source of data for us.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think very impactful as well as you start looking at these and the effects of markdowns on that. So one last question, and I think this is probably a longer topic that we won't get into, but for right now, just from a performance perspective, in the current data marts that you guys have, what are the performance considerations that we need to be aware of when we're looking at requests that have been similar to the types of things that you've seen other people use?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. Performance is a big kind of unknown sometimes, and it's a conversation we probably would take into a larger conversation. But really, what we're trying to do for this project is do some data analysis, right? And really kind of figure out, looking at that operational detail data, a good model to do in pricing performance. And so I think it's going to be fine with the data mart today and the performance it has. And then what we can do is decide after the analysis is done is where might that be moved to be aggregated in a way for other people to consume it. So it's a kind of an investigational project, right, for the data business analyst, but then we can operationalize it later, right?
Yep, absolutely. And like I said, I know we'll have a whole nother discussion about that, but thank you for your time. I know we have much deeper conversations to go on this, but this gives us a great start, and look forward to working with you and your team.
Yeah, thank you.